Part 3, Chapter 7, Relinquished. The dissociated view of my ceiling above bled into many similar memories. Similar sentiments twisted my gut and doubled the weight of my own blood. Heavy eyelids tempted, but a constant dying spark kept my thoughts alive. Bloodshot, inverted, I blinked and exhaled through my stuffy nose. The weighted blanket encompassed me completely, protecting my vulnerable flesh from the cold just outside the fabric. This cocoon kept me guarded throughout the night, and silence was my only company. These past few hours, since the incident, have been callous and without personal sympathy. Circling the drain of morbidity, I dwelled in the nihilism I had created. A ringing in my ears was only matched by a particularly soothing sound. My eyes were drawn to the window where I examined the colorless lawn and trees from the mattress. A loud crashing rain splashed the glass as a gentle wind pushed the curtain slightly through the inch gap. It started a little over an hour ago, not long after Kari woke up and started her day. She showered, blow-dried her hair, made tea, got the mail, and turned on the television. She's been relatively idle since. I yawned, taking the opportunity to roll my neck and lock my eyes onto Tansu. She was sleeping on her side, facing me, the blanket pulled up to her shoulders, one arm out and flat on the bed. Her bangs were messily strewn about her forehead, and her delicately pursed lips gently cycled air. I smirked at the sight, butterflies in my belly. However, I couldn't ignore the darkened aura surrounding her body. The fragmented visuals of the night prior seeped from my subconscious, leaving me in a subdued state of lingering anxiety. I shivered, the chill penetrating any small gap in my blanket defenses. I decided that staying in bed any longer would be pointless, so, with a huff and a mild dismissal, I sat up. A low clearing of my throat preceded my departure from the warm nest. I quietly shut the window, keeping my view low. From there, I turned and latched onto her again. I felt a magnetism, a deep desire that had no name. Carefully, I made my way between the mattresses and stopped. I sensed the heat flexing from her skin and the underlying toxic flavor coming from her breath. It was only there that I noticed the redness of her face and the very faint tremble in her hand. I placed my hand over her forehead, hot. Worry nestled in close by my belly, and I sighed despondently. I pulled my hand back, using it to adjust my shirt before hobbling over to the closet. In the background, through the closed door, I could hear the TV playing what sounded like a news broadcast. My stiff shoulders made it difficult to open the closet and rifle through the hanging shirts, but I was able to gather an outfit for a lazy day and got changed at the foot of the bed. Dressed in a tight, long-sleeved gray shirt with a white lightning bolt decal and some basic black jeans, I exited the bedroom with little clamor. In the open now, I checked my surroundings to see most of the lights on due to the gloom and Kari's bedroom door open. The pressure in my bladder made me rush to the bathroom and start the day off as most should. Then I washed my hands and face and brushed my hair, still getting distracted by its length. Alice didn't show up in the mirror, which I took as a good thing. The last thing I needed now was to see her smug face and get all pissed off. Now, feeling a bit more alive, I strolled out of the bathroom and put on a mask. Not a happy one, but enough to disguise the torment I grappled with. Kari had moved to the kitchen. I could see the clock as I approached. It was 10 in the morning. "Morning," I greeted with a scratchy voice. She perked up and turned to me with a smile, the crow's feet ever present in her eyes. "Good morning. How are you?" she asked. Pretty groggy, but I'll live," I chuckled. "Did you sleep well?" She set a notepad down and focused on me with a smile. "Not really. A nightmare kinda stuck with me, so I was a little on edge throughout the night." "Oh, I'm sorry for that. Would you like something to eat?" My stomach squirmed. That's okay." I politely declined. She gestured to the stove. "Are you sure? It won't take long at all," she smiled. "Thanks, but my stomach's a bit iffy.
I don't want to waste your time if I can't keep anything down right now.
Alrighty then.
What are you up to?
She gestured to the notepad. I was just jotting down a chores list for the day.
Oh, what do you have planned so far?
Cleaning, mostly. I'm starting with the laundry first. She folded her hands in front of her.
Gotcha. Do you want some help? I think everything of ours is in the baskets and not on the floor.
That's all right. You enjoy the morning. Maybe later on we can all pitch in and do some dusting.
Sure, I like dusting. I'd rather do it than you anyway. I feel so bad when you go into your sneezing fits.
She shrugged lightly. It certainly isn't fun. A bright exchange, and then she walked away, entering the bathroom next to gather clothes. I loitered for a moment, just spacing out. A dizziness held on to me, cementing me in place for a little longer until I forced a step. Entering the kitchen, I rummaged through the fridge and snagged a carton of orange juice, extra pulp. A clean glass was quickly filled and emptied, then rinsed off in the sink. It wasn't food, but at least I had something in my belly. I yawned again and listened to the news from the island. Reports of heavy winds and minor flooding by the pond were repeated between the hosts. Right away, I was stricken with ways to spend the day, it being my last. Repeating that in my head contorted my face into a frown and a pit formed in my belly. It didn't feel real. I slumped in place, tuning out their words and cycling in the abyssal corners of my mind. Last night, I almost lost everything. I spent the following hours awake and searching for ways to fix this. There aren't any. There's no telling how long I have until danger arrives, and I still have no idea how to handle final interactions without a goodbye. Every word was laced with guilt, an admission of my regret without a sound. The days leading up were a warning, a precursor to doom. Those interruptions at school, the tight, winding anxiety through all waking hours, I should have been more careful. Even though I did nothing different at all. Kari strolled out of the bathroom with a basket full of laundry. "By the way, is she up yet?" she asked.
Not when I came out. I don't think she's feeling very well.
She got a concerned but accustomed face. "Why do you say that?"
I felt her forehead. She was a little warm.
A little nod. "In that case, can you try and wake her for me?"
Shouldn't we let her sleep it off?
Yes, but I'd like to take her temperature and tackle this. She has a tendency to suddenly come down with a cold, just like her dear old mother. She smiled softly.
She does? I know you're immunocompromised, but I don't remember Tansu ever suddenly getting ill, I asked.
She tilted her head. It's rare, but more common in the springtime. She doesn't handle temperature differential all too well. Then there's the pollen in the summer. I'd rather not risk a week of discomfort if I can prevent it for her. I sauntered closer.
That must have been awful growing up like that.
At times. I was a heck of a handful for my own parents, but I wouldn't change it even if I could. She smirked, a twinkle in her eye. I raised an eyebrow.
Why's that?
A light blush. I would never have met Tansu's father, Nakito. She smiled. But that's a story for another time. My hands transitioned to my pockets, cycling all of Tansu's hints and silent ponderings surrounding her dad. A sudden depression blanketed my arms and whittled me down. She glanced down at the laundry and hoisted it up a little to get a better grip. Noticing this, I realized I was holding her up.
Okay, I'll try to get her up, but no promises.
I smirked. Thank you. She continued walking, taking the dirty laundry toward the basement door by the living room. I lumbered to our half-open bedroom door and pushed it open all the way. Peering into the desolate, chilly domicile, I listened for her breathing. It was steady, with a frail mucus grind. I reached her and knelt down beside the frame, seeing the muscles in her face had loosened. I whispered,
Tan, wake up.
She didn't react. I leaned in a little.
Hey, your mom wants to take your temperature.
I nudged her shoulder a little. Her eyes clenched.
Leave me alone,
she replied in a dreadful tone.
I paused, then nudged her again. But Don, her eyes shot open, bloodshot and volatile. Go away! Shocked, I pulled back and raised my hands defensively. She glared at me with an intensity I had never seen on her. I stood up and her eyes tracked me. She still clutched the blankets up to her neck and remained very still, like an animal defending its territory. A little peeved, I huffed and dropped both hands. Okay, whatever. Just don't give your mom that attitude when she comes in here. I tried not to sound too annoyed. She then threw the blanket off and sat up, propping herself up on one arm and shooting me a fiery stare. Get out! Her eyes were red like she was about to cry, but anger held a tight grip on her emotions. My expression slacked, caught off guard by her direct, sharp words. I struggled to find a response. Everything that presented itself reflected the tinge behind my ribs. Raw and angry, combative. I had to literally bite my tongue so as not to snap back at her. Then something odd happened. Tansu's baggy eyes shut tightly, and she blinked a few times before her face sank down, innocent again. She put her hand on the top of her head and scratched. Her arm wobbled and she laid on her back. My rage started to leak out. What the hell? Where did that come from? I growled. She slurred. What? What are you talking about? She said, holding her hand over her forehead, now with searching eyes. Wow, my head hurts. She groaned. I retracted. You don't remember? I was sleeping. Why do you sound so angry? The spinning of my brain ground to a halt, and I closed my fist tight, then let it go. Man, I don't think your mom needs a thermometer. You definitely have a fever. I could taste something foul emanating off of her, and I began to wonder just how severe this disposition could be. Yeah, I don't feel too good. I noted the pressure around me. It felt like the room was underwater. The walls flexing inward, only just holding back boundless oblivion. A copper taste slid across my tongue as I calculated this sensation. I know that when people get upset or express any negative emotion, it leaves an impression in the air that I can dissect. But I've never felt this before. I offered cheer in my voice. Just go back to sleep. I'll have your mom bring you some medicine and water, or whatever you need. She nodded, closing her eyes and breathing through a stuffy nose. I pulled the blanket over her and let the heat swell. Lingering briefly, I looked back to the window and watched the wind carry a varied rain across the yard. I left the room with worry in my bones. The angst I felt was lifted upon entering the open space again. Despondent, I emptied my mind of everything and started to wander. The bleak nature of the day affected me the opposite of how I usually feel. Downtrodden, murky gray often acted as an inspiration to me, motivating me to work. But after what just happened, I felt nothing but conflict. Dragging my feet over to the kitchen, I lifted my chin and stared at the cabinet doors. Every notch in the wood, scrape, and imperfect stain stuck out to me. To think all of this wood was once alive, now repurposed, selfishly. I couldn't stop staring, mentally wandering in existential nihilism. Last night hung heavily over my skull, threatening to crush me if I allowed it to pervert my thoughts once again. Maybe it's possible that my own energy leaked out into that room and made her sick. After all, revisiting my own home, I personally witnessed the ruin, decay. Kim, dear. Kari stole my attention. Yeah, I said without turning. Is Tonsky awake? No, but she's definitely not well. I think we should leave her be for a little longer, then maybe make her some soup for lunch. I said like a drone, empty and almost bitter. Her hesitance to answer almost got me to turn, but she inevitably spoke. I see. Then would you care to help me with the dishes? I stared for another few seconds, then switched my eyes to the sink. 2 pots, a single pan, and a cutting board, plus a few plates and cups were all stacked in the stainless steel bowl. Sure, I agreed, still not looking at her. She approached from behind and placed an appreciative hand on my shoulder as she passed and stopped at the sink. I twitched at her touch, then slumped over to the hand towel, drying duty as usual. Typically, I found this menial task enjoyable at a fundamental level. The news in the background kept her entertained while she started to wash the plates. It had no hold on me, however. My muscles were almost moving in slow motion, just dragging seconds behind any command I gave. I couldn't stay focused. I couldn't keep up. Tremendous remorse hemorrhaged from my soul, an inescapable mindset that screamed, "You don't belong here." Now, more powerful than ever. Wet dish, dry dish, place on the rack. Wet cup, dry cup, place on the rack. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Without my will, the chore was being completed. I watched myself from 1,000 feet above my mortal body, cursing at the vessel that deceived everyone she loved for a chance at love. The seconds ticked by, bringing me closer to lonely oblivion away from everything I'd built. Bringing me closer to loneliness away from everything I'd built. My stomach hurt. I slowed almost to a complete halt, repeatedly drying the same plate with circular motions that loosened my grip with each lap. "Kimberly." At the sound of her voice, I was ripped from this presence and dragged back into my body. That spark of consciousness jolted my hands and knocked the plate from my grasp. It hit the floor and loudly shattered, exploding ceramic shards across the short range. "Shit," I cursed, immediately kneeling to recover the plates. "Hold on, I don't want you to cut yourself. Let me get the broom." She hurried to the dining room and snatched the broom from the corner, returning quickly and dropping the dustpan to the floor. I grabbed the dustpan and held it for her with wide eyes and frustrated shame across my face. "I'm really sorry about that," I apologized while she slid the largest pieces into the pan. She chuckled. "Don't be. I'm sorry I startled you." I was lost in thought. I should have been paying attention. "It's not a very exciting task," she joked. Now the little pieces were swept up and deposited into the trash can. Being at that low of an angle, I checked for any tiny shimmering pieces that may have escaped her broom, but it seems she got everything. I stood up and handed her the dustpan. She returned both to the dining room and re-entered the kitchen. "Would you like to switch?" She smirked. I shook my head. "No, I think I'll manage." I put on a smile. She gave an assuring look, then positioned herself at the sink again to start on the pots. She held a smile all the while she scrubbed. That became my new focus. It was a sincere smile hard to come by in a town like this, one that held such a powerful, genuine interest and appreciation. A smile that was almost perfect. Perhaps it was at one point. A memory presented itself with vivid imagery, and I couldn't help but speak. "One time," I started with a whisper. Her eyes shifted to me. "One time, I dropped a glass cup onto the floor when helping my dad with the dishes. It broke." An old burden trudged up my throat. The rustling water splashed against the pot in the sink as her hands idled on the edge. "He was so angry that he made me clean up the glass with just my hands. I think I was 9 at the time. I still have a little scar on my thumb where I cut myself." A pained chuckle slipped from my lips. A moment of clarity entered my brain. I sniffled, wiping moisture from the tip of my nose. "I don't know why I told you that." She responded quietly, absorbing my words. "That's all right." "Miss Ikono?" I whimpered, eyes falling to the floor. She reached up and turned off the water. New silence fluttered through the air like sparkling wisps. Her body turned to me, a new aura emitted from her skin. I bit my lip. "Why do you both care so much?" A pause of disbelief. "Why would you ask something like that?" Her voice was tender, concerned. "I've never understood it, but I didn't know how to ask." She grabbed another towel from the counter and wiped her hands dry, keeping a watch on me. I continued. "It's different now, but back then, I hardly knew Tansu at all, and yet When my dad died, you took me in immediately. Tansu has shown me forgiveness and acceptance in ways I don't deserve. You both carried my burdens for too long. I started to get quiet, eyes scanning the floor, her feet, and the lowest edge of the cabinet. I took a long pause as the thoughts circled around like a spinning top. Then raw emotion shot forward. You adopted a total stranger! I tearfully shouted, lashing my overwhelmed expression to hers and meeting them with a powerful emotion. The entire world ceased for a second while she processed my words and carefully calculated a response. Quietly, she moved toward the dining room table and ushered me to follow. I joined her, dragging my feet the whole way with my heart beating to escape my chest. To my surprise, when I sat down, she did not take the other end of the table. Instead, she sat right beside me. An awkward energy only I could interpolate surrounded us. She placed both elbows on the table and joined her hands, eyes fixated on the front lawn just outside the window. Tansky is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. I love her with all my heart, no matter what. But she has had trouble in her life, as everyone does. Her fingers tightened around each other. Growing up, she couldn't really make friends. No confidence, you see, but shyness wasn't entirely the problem. Her father's passing made everything so much harder. She not only lost her dad, but she also lost her best friend in the world. I swallowed the acidic spit and uncomfortably rocked in my seat, stifling all the battling emotions. She said it was almost 3 years ago. I sniffled. How did it happen, if you don't mind me asking? Kari ran her fingers through her hair and took her time answering. Nakito worked as an EMT when we lived in Rhode Island. He and his partner responded to a call. A teenager needed their insulin, and they were the closest. Everything went well. The boy was fine, and they went on their way. Afterward, they stopped to get gas. She started to slow down at this point. He went inside to pay, but there was an active robbery taking place. I held my breath, picturing the scene in my head, almost borrowing details from what her emotions leaked. The sorrow that followed her words was intoxicating. She stuttered. He was shot 3 times for unknowingly entering a tense situation. She clutched her stomach, and I could hear the gunshots ringing. I'm sorry. My words left my mouth, laced in despair. Losing him had catastrophic repercussions for Tonsky and me. She became anxious and angry all the time. She was afraid of doing anything, seeing anyone, and going anywhere. I found it hard to manage her, and we fought often. She did everything with her dad. They were inseparable. She regrettably chuckled. A sorrowful frown painted both of our faces. She was palpably reliving these painful memories, enough for me to empathize with her and soak myself in her buried agony. She continued, Even moving here, things didn't seem to get any better. I didn't know what to do, but then something amazing happened. What? I asked in a hushed voice. She unclasped her hands, resting them flat on the table. You. What did I do that made her different? You helped her. You didn't shun or antagonize her. You gave an effort that no one else had and sparked something that I thought was dead inside of her. You brought her back to life and accomplished what I, as her mother, failed to do. Her voice began to shake. When I see the two of you together, I see 2 confident young ladies who found their missing piece in each other. The way she looks at you, all I see is purpose in her. I'm not sure you understand just how much of an impact you have had on her just by being here. I took you in because I trust you, just as she does. I had my teeth in a tight clench, fighting back more tears. There was no response I could muster to accurately portray my feelings. Every word fell miles short of its intended meaning. With tense shoulders and a relaxed posture, I tried to stifle my whimpering, but it was no use. After everything she just said and all that it implied, the meteoric reality of this final day shattered my last ounce of fleeting hope. I sat in that chair, bawling like a flustered child, unable to cope with the reality presented. Lead-filled teardrops fell to my lap, flowing like a rushing river. She paused, mouth partially gaped, and eyes as wide as they have ever been. Then she relaxed herself and closed her eyes, a motherly sigh. She inched her chair closer to me and brought my head under her chin where she embraced me, gently caressing her fingers through my hair. This is the mother's touch that I have been searching my deepest memories for and never found. This is what I've been longing for, what I'm sacrificing. In wake of this moment, I had an epiphany. The feelings I have for them, the pain we carried every day, is mutual. We all grieve, just as we all strive to be loved again. In each other, we have found a new balance. We saved one another.